Welcome to this lecture that I decided to hold because reasons. Today we're going to learn about the Tengwar, the genius script of the elves. And as I start, the history within and without Middle-earth. In Middle-earth, the Tengwar were created by the legendary elf Feanor, who I'm fairly certain we all know, who based his creation on an earlier script called Sarati. The script was originally created to represent the sound system of Feanor's own language, Quenya, but came to be used to write the languages of many peoples across Arda, and even took the place of the Kirith runes as the primary writing system of the Sindar elves. In real life, the Tengwar was created by the legendary author John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, who based his creation on his earlier scripts Sarati and Valmeric script, and may also have taken inspiration from Francis Ludwig's Universal Alphabet, And I did not misspell that, by the way. It's in the original document, it is written with two L's. Anyhow, the script was originally created to write the many fictional languages of Tolkien's world, but would later be used to write a multitude of both constructed and natural languages. How does the Tengwar function? Well, the base of the Tengwar is the 36 Tengwar. Tengwar being plural for Tengwar. Tengwar meaning essentially symbol. To the left here, we have a writing of the English version of the Declaration of Universal Human Rights. And to the right here is the original writing method and system of how the Tengwar was originally used by Feanor, and how it was used therefore for Quenya. The 24 first characters are ordered based on where in the mouth they are pronounced, in 4 different places in this case, and how they are pronounced, in this case in 6 ways. So we have the dental sounds, we have the labial sounds, also the dental sounds are called tinkotema, the labial sounds called parmatema, the velar sounds called kalmatema, and the labialized velar sounds called quesetema. These primary symbols represent large amount of signs and sounds, but not all of them, because we have an additional 12 characters down here that represent other sounds. Romen and Arda. Romen representing one form of writing R, the rolled R to be particular, although Ore also does that. Arda, which represents the RD consonant cluster, so Arda represents both R and D at the same time, as in Arda. Lambe represents L. Alda represents the consonant cluster LD, so it's essentially corresponds to Arda, but for L instead of R. We have Silme, which is S. Silme nuquerna, which is S upside down, but also represents S. Esse, which is 2 S's, and can sometimes be considered either a long S or a voiced Z. We'd also have an upside down version of that, also called esse nuquerna. We have Hjarmen, which is usually used for the sound H, though not always. Questa sindarinwa, which is used for the H sound, if I'm not mistaken. Yanta, which is used for the palatal approximant, also known as Y. And Ure, which I am not quite quite certain what it's actually used for in Quenya particularly, but it is rather common to use it as a vowel sound in other ways and languages that you can use the Tengwar for. In addition to the Tengwar, we have the Testar. I will note, I do not know if it's actually supposed to be Testar or Testar, because I have actually seen the H and the T switch places. So I am not sure, but since it's mostly written like this, I will take it to be Testar. The singular of Testar, by the way, is Tetta, sorry. And what these represent are a form of diacritic symbols representing usually vowels. So we have the diacritic for A, the one for E, the one for E, the one for O, the one for U, and also A, E, O, and U. In two different ways of writing, either you have a special character or doubling the character depending on which theta you're using. Here's another form of them up here, but it's still the same. So it's A, E, O, U, and long E. Although I'm fairly certain this might actually be for Sindarin, in which case this is not an E, it's an Y. But nevertheless, these are usually most often used for vowels. So, the way you use these differ in so-called modes. These here, the middle section here represents, as I said before, the way that you use the Tengwar in Quenya. So, again, dental sounds, labial sounds, velar sounds, and labiovelar sounds. So, tinko being the sound for T or T, depending on if you're aspirating your stops or not. Labial sounds, usually here in Parma, being for P or B, depending on, again, aspiration. Calma for K, and quesse for a labialized form, so quesse. And these all, of course, represent different modes of articulation, so voiced nasalized stops. Ando, umbar, anga, ungue. And voiceless fricatives, thule, formin, harma, questa. Voiceless palatalized stops, anto, ampa, anka, unque. Nasal stops, numen, malta, ngoldo, ngualme. And approximants, ore, walla, anna, vilja. And again, we have these symbols, romen, arda, lambe, alda, silme, silbe, nuquerna, esse, nuquerna, hjarmen, huesta, sindarino, yanta, and ure. These are, of course, the Quenya version, but there are, of course, languages not just Quenya that use the Tengwar. So, for example, Sindarin has two different writing modes. The full mode, also called the mode of Beleriand, which is an alphabetic writing mode. In other words, each symbol represents a single sound, including using certain symbols for vowel sounds separate from the consonants. So here we have the word mellon, M-E-L-L-O-N, mellon. We also have the Omatehtar mode, the mode of Gondor, which is an abjatic style instead, using only diacritics to represent vowels. This is also the same word, it's mellon, but it's M, E diacritic, L with a secondary line to represent that it's a long L, O as a diacritic, and N as its own symbol. There are, of course, many of these modes. Some here on the side to the right. We can see a few examples with phonetic writing, how they can be pronounced. for different languages. We also have these here at the bottom of this chart. We also have four extra characters used for other sounds, particularly the the bottom rightmost characters being so-called vowel carriers, used when you can't write the vowel on another symbol. So if there is no consonant following the vowel in this for the oma Testar, you could instead place a vowel carrier there and add the vowel on top of that. So these are not sounds in themselves, usually, instead representing basically a way to just write vowels separately. There are also modes that you can use for writing real languages, not just Tolkien's languages. For example, to the left we have Esperanto, where you have a bunch of the symbols representing the sounds in Esperanto. We also have an example here in the middle of Welsh. And to the right we have Te Reo Maori, which is of course the language of the Maori people of New Zealand. As you can see, these are very different sound systems, but they still fundamentally use the same writing method. There's a set of punctuations also. I forgot to remove a bit of the darkness in that E, but that's fine. But yes, there's a system of punctuation to represent different, punctuation to start and end sentences and whatnot. So commas, periods, colons, semicolons, hyphens, paragraph ends, question marks, exclamation marks, and parentheses, all being represented. And lastly, we have a few samples of the Tengwar being used. The most famous example may probably be the ring poem written particularly notably on the One Ring, created by Sauron. I could read it, but I'm not going to. But needless to say, these are all examples using different languages. I'm fairly certain the left words is Sindarin, the middle is Quenya, and the rightmost is Black Speech. And to end it off here, these are my sources. So if you want to learn more, these sources will tell you more. But this has been a basic introduction to the Tengwar